Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to have you here today for the State of the City address of the Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce. I'm Tracy, the director of the chamber, and we're excited to bring this presentation to you to give you an update on what's happening with the City of Auburn. So again, welcome. Thank you for coming, and we hope that you enjoy this presentation. Today we have the Mayor of the City of Auburn, Michael Quill, and the City Manager, Jeff Dygert, to present to you. And at this point, I will hand it over to the Mayor. Take it away, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully you can't see me. I'll make it easy on everyone. So I believe this is my 14th State of the City address. And as I've said many times, this is probably the toughest address as mayor that I have to accomplish. But I'm glad you're all here. It's good to see that life is getting back to somewhat normal, or the new normal. A year ago, I don't believe any of us thought what we would go through in the past 12 months we're about to encounter. And I'm fearful that we're not quite out of the woods yet. Things are getting better. There's many vaccines out. We'll get into that in a moment. But I always have a half a loaf of bread instead of no bread. So just keep smiling, call me up, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I can handle that. In a few minutes, I'm going to be introducing our city manager, Jeff Dygert. And I couldn't be more prouder of the city manager or the city staff under Mr. Dygert. I've worked with a lot of managers, worked with a lot of co-workers at this city. Jeff and his crew have really gotten things done. This year with COVID, with vaccines and so forth, Jeff and our city employees have taken it on. They've administered the vaccines. They've attended more meetings than are possible in hours of a day. But it's every member of the city workforce that has participated, whether it's the firefighters, vaccinating folks, whether it's the police officers, whatever they may be doing, our city administrative staff, everyone is working, making phone calls. Believe it or not, in this day and age, there's many people do not have computer access or do not know how to go about getting vaccinated for COVID. Jeff and his crew have taken it on, and we're very proud of that. It's going to be interesting in the coming months with the money coming down from the federal government, how that will be affecting our finances. Mr. Dygert, I'm sure we'll be getting into that. I don't believe in fact, I know there's nothing planned yet by the city council. We're waiting for our administrators to bring it together for us. I was just saying that in a few months, wife and I are going to take a vacation. I know everyone's dying to get out. It's that time of year, so let's get out, but let's be safe. And let's take the precautions we need so we're having a better year next year. So with that, I'd like to introduce our city manager, Mr. Jeff Dygert. I shouldn't talk in front of him because he'd be looking for a pay raise, but he's doing a fantastic job. So Jeff, it's up to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Quill, for the introduction. Again, as the mayor had mentioned, last year, about this time, we were just getting started into that long journey with COVID. And when we did the State of the City last year, utilizing a platform like this, like Zoom, never really thought that we'd necessarily be doing it 2 years in a row. But again, we're hopefully on the other side of the peak here and getting back to normal. We'll talk more about that as we go along. I have a lot of things to talk about here related to projects that the city's working on. I want to start by thanking the Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce for putting this together, as they always do, and specifically for city staff, Jenny Haynes, our Director of Planning and Economic Development, and Stephen Selvik, our Deputy Director of Community Planning. Again, a lot of what I have to discuss here today is about community projects, both public sector projects and private sector projects. And a year ago, as we were going through trying to figure out how we were going to respond to COVID, we took an approach, the council took an approach to stay steady, right? Not to have a knee-jerk reaction to things that were going on, to address the issues in an active and appropriate way, but not to just shut down in fear of what might happen. And I think that that's been a prudent choice along the way, because we continued to work on projects, close out some projects, start some others, and maintain the course. So in front of you, you see an aerial view of at least a portion of the city of Auburn, and all those little colored dots on there are a variety of projects that are either in progress or taking shape, or that have been completed recently within the last 12 months throughout the city of Auburn in all sorts of neighborhoods and areas. And we'll talk more about those as we go through. And again, some of these are private projects with some public funding assistance, and others are some of our public projects. So we'll start out with this particular neighborhood here. What you see on the map in front of you is the intersection of Seminary and Nelson Street. And in the foreground is the public safety building or fire station. This is a project that was talked about. It's been talked about for many years, dating back to at least the early 1990s, if not earlier than that. And for the last 6 or 7 years, city staff and several developers have discussed this project, and we finally got into a position where everything lined up and we were able to continue to pursue this project. So you can see the dot there in the center of the screen for the public safety building. That was a former shopping center that had really fallen into some disrepair, had been vacant. Most of it had been vacant for quite a long time. That is being reutilized. This project is, we talk about it as about a $10 million project, approximately $1.2 million in downtown revitalization initiative funding going towards that project, as well as $2 million from a DEC grant to help offset the cost of that project. It will be the new home of the Auburn Fire Department headquarters, which will then vacate the current Market Street building that was constructed in 1930. It will also contain an emergency operations center. And what that is, for folks that don't know, is it's a place to run an operation when there's a significant community emergency, right? So in a case of things like in our current situation, COVID, this could operate as the command and communication center, or more typically natural disasters and things like that. It is a recommendation from Homeland Security that communities have these types of facilities available to them so that they can effectively respond to large-scale emergencies. So that will be in place in this building. And it is that particular aspect of the project is a joint venture between Cayuga County Emergency Management and the City of Auburn. Also contained within this building will be a new IT infrastructure that will serve the municipal needs of the City of Auburn. Right now, the IT infrastructure is housed within City Hall, and that again is a 1930s era building that really wasn't designed for that. So this is going to be purpose-built space to support all the technology needs of the City of Auburn. We took this opportunity to have these aerial photos up to show you the community impact of some of the other programs we have going on. So everybody's familiar, I would assume at this point, with the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. So again, Public Safety Building is one of the original recipients of some of that funding. Next door at Willard Chapel, just to the right in the screen, another recipient of Downtown Revitalization Initiative funding. They'll be moving ahead with some projects there under that. At the top of the screen, you see Nick's Ride. That project is well underway, as well as a DRI project. And on the Seminary Street section there, you'll see Next Door Properties. There's a housing project going on there that is also a recipient of local DRI funding. So what we had hoped to happen here, oh, I forgot, we've also got Feast Kitchen, which is the building right next door to the public safety building, also a recent recipient of DRI funding. What we had hoped this project would do was to spur some revitalization and community investment in a neighborhood, and it seems like that is happening. So we're pleased with progress there. One of the questions that comes up often is, what is the progress of the public safety building? And certainly during the winter months, it didn't look like much was happening. There's a big plastic shroud over the whole thing. Now that the weather is starting to change, if you drive by, you'll notice that many of the exterior walls are up, new roof structures in place, interior walls are going up, electric, plumbing, and ventilation work is taking part in the section that was the former grocery store. So things are progressing. That project is slated to wrap up in about September. These are some photos of just work that's happening on site, again, stuff that you typically wouldn't be able to see if you were driving down Seminary or Nelson Street, but definitely work is progressing. And we have several local contractors and lots of regional contractors working on this project. The next photo we've got up here is some of our downtown area with a focus on the State Street Public Plaza. Again, this is a project on a site that's been discussed for many, many years, almost 20 years. The site has been the topic of discussion about what if, how do we deal with this? What should we do? During the DRI process, there were many public meetings to get community input on what the best use for that property would be. And the consensus was some sort of a public gathering place or public green space. So that project is moving forward. Work is slated to start in mid-April and wrap up in the fall for a public gathering space on State Street. You will notice also in that picture, again, several other colored dots on some projects. So what was formerly commonly referred to as the Driscoll building on Genesee Street has recently changed hands to the Muldrow Group, and they're going to be building out that space and renovating that space. They're also a recipient of some local DRI funding. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see It's a Great Life, which is a spin-off, if you will, of Good Shepherd's Brewing, who has made a significant investment in that building on Genesee Street. And they plan to do more with some more recent DRI funding. In the middle of the screen, we have Auburn Public Theater, which has been working on several projects for upgrades and expansions within their original footprint. That will continue, again, with some funding from the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And lastly, on that screen, on Genesee Street, Rudolph's, which will be an ice cream shop. I think that's slated to open relatively soon. Again, another recipient of Downtown Revitalization funding. And we thank all of these business owners and developers for, their consistency and their unwavering pursuit during COVID. It was a tough time, and there was a lot of confidence shown on the part of some of our business owners to keep forging ahead with some of these projects. The next screen, it doesn't seem like it's really necessarily something that's exciting, but we have a parking garage project going on. Back in 2019, there was a fire in the parking garage that did some structural damage. We are just wrapping up the repairs related to that fire, and we are making some capital investments in the parking garage. That structure was built in the early to mid 1970s, and it has survived quite well compared to a lot of other parking garages in the Northeast United States. About 10 years ago, we made a significant capital investment in that to try to extend its useful life. And we plan on doing that again this year. and having that work wrap up in the fall, but we have some structural work we want to do. And then there will be some other things that we are looking to do on that facility as well to potentially improve lighting and just the general appeal of the building. Again, it's another project that happens that most people don't really necessarily pay a lot of attention to is the city landfill. It's been in operation for many, many years, and this past year took in its final load of refuse. And we had spent many years discussing the future of the landfill. And during those discussions, during those surveys and studies, we found out several things. First of all, that the landfill had reached it in its current state, had reached its capacity, according to the Department of Environmental Conservation. We really couldn't do much more with it. Couldn't take in any more trash beyond a certain point, which we met in December. And in order to expand, we'd have to do several things. First of all, we would potentially have to move power lines, gas lines, deal with wetlands, potentially acquire property in another municipality. And all of those things came with a hefty price tag. And when we looked at the status of the business side of operating a landfill and the capital investment that would be required to do the expansion and the ongoing cost, it wasn't feasible for us to continue in that business. So we've gone the route of constructing a landfill transfer station on the property. We have stopped accepting commercial deliveries of trash to that facility, but we continue to provide the curbside pickup that all of our citizens are used to. So curbside pickup does not change. All that happens is your curbside trash gets delivered here, it gets transferred into larger trucks and hauled to a different landfill. So we'll continue to monitor that operation. We're currently discussing the required necessary procedure for closing the current landfill. And these are just a few pictures of the new facility down there. It's a very simple structure. And again, our trucks come in, they unload trash, and then it gets dumped into larger vehicles to get hauled out. We still do accept resident trash. Residents that were used to taking their trash to the landfill on their own can still do that. And again, curbside pickup has not changed at all. Probably one of the most impactful projects you may see happen this construction season is the South Street Reconstruction project. This is Route 34 from the city line to Clymer Street. Relatively short section of road, but very heavily traveled. The main route into the city for lots of folks coming from the south. So there's several things going on here. This is not simply a resurface project. This is a total reconstruction of that roadway. It will include new water service, new water main throughout, new sewer service, and new storm sewer service, as well as a new culvert, sidewalks, street lighting, and a widened pavement surface. So this will be an extensive project. It is slated to wrap up at the end of the year, probably November. But during that time, certainly is going to be an inconvenience, and we understand that. But it's just a necessary part of progress in that area and get these things taken care of. State Street Bridge, for most intents, wrapped up last fall, early winter, in November. Pretty much wrapped up and open to vehicular traffic. The work at this site reconvened here last week, and what that is pretty much the landscaping work. And in the little box picture within the larger picture, you'll see the artist rendering of what that finished project will look like. So that project structurally is wrapped up, and we're just doing some cosmetic things there now that should wrap up in June. This was the second major bridge project that we had undertaken in the last few years. A few years ago, we did a total reconstruction of the North Division Street Bridge, just slightly downstream from this. State Street Bridge, some of you will remember at times we had holes in the deck surface that would go right straight through to the water. We did several temporary repairs of that structure over the years, and it was in need of a total reconstruction. That also included the retaining walls along the river and things like that. Our next bridge project is slated to be the Aurelius AV Bridge, and that is just getting started in the planning stages right at the moment. These are just a few pictures of the construction process for that bridge. And again, this is simply not just a resurfacing, it was a total reconstruction of that bridge, similar to North Division Street. So on your screen now, you see an aerial view of Falcon Park as well as Casey Park. And there's been an awful lot of activity here over the last handful of years. Casey Park was another city facility built in the 1970s, I believe, and over the years received a number of upgrades here and there. Over the last few years, we've made some significant investments in Casey Park as well as Falcon Park. To include, if we were to look at Casey Park, new roof on the facility, which certainly was needed. The pool, the public pool at Casey Park received a new liner, a new pool pump and chemical system. The ice rink at Falcon Park received a new ice chiller and Zamboni. There were new lockers installed in the locker rooms and new flooring. The playground at Falcon Park was one of our most recent attempts at a community build, and it was very successful. So the playground down there is new. And the tennis courts were resurfaced there, as well as the installation or conversion of some tennis basketball courts into pickleball courts at that location. And current or planned projects there are going to be revamping the skateboard park at Casey Park. In the foreground of the photo, you see Falcon Park, home of the Auburn Doubledays. As most folks would know, the last year or so have been a little troubling for our minor league baseball franchise. We had a couple of things. We kind of had a double whammy with the Doubledays, and first and foremost was a contract negotiation issue between minor league baseball and Major League Baseball, which went on for an extended period of time and left us not knowing exactly how things would play out there and what the impact would be on us here locally. And certainly COVID last year had a dramatic impact and essentially canceled the season regardless of what happened with those contract negotiations. Ultimately, the decision by minor league or Major League Baseball to eliminate approximately 40 minor league teams across the country had an impact on our local franchise. And early on, prior to any final decision, there were several leagues, several teams and team owners that reached out to us with interest in taking over the franchise in Auburn, New York. So what we did over the last few months is we had many discussions with a variety of folks from various leagues, various team owners or potential team owners, managers, and such. And we took that decision very serious because we knew that there's definitely a strong history of baseball in Auburn, New York. We wanted to continue that history at the highest practical level for the community. And I think we were successful in that. And we've got a new partnership going with the Perfect Game League and some new owners, Bob Oman and Don Lewis, who are going to They've created a new franchise. They will utilize the Doubledays name. The city will maintain ownership of all the rights to the Doubledays name, but they will use it while they're here. They're part of what's referred to as a Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League. And that is a league that is in predominantly New York State and is largely made up of prior New York Penn League teams from throughout the decades and throughout the years. So rather than our local team playing teams that are out of state, I think we're going to see most of the travel will be within New York State, and that we think that might be a good thing, so that our neighbors and other similar communities in New York will more than likely visit Falcon Park. We know that if they come to visit, they'll love it and they'll come back again. And we're sure the teams are going to feel the same way. So we have good enthusiastic ownership and a little bit of a new model to look at down there, but I think it's going to be successful. We'll continue our partnership with Cayuga Community College at Falcon Park for their athletic programs, as well as Auburn High School. None of anything that we've done has adversely impacted those prior relationships. And we are expanding the scope of what we can do at Falcon Park with the new turf installation about 2 seasons ago. Not only can we do baseball, but we can do softball, soccer, and lacrosse. And we're starting to see more and more interest from teams and leagues to utilize that facility. So that's a good thing for us as far as the facility goes, and a good thing for the community as we bring in more people from outside to experience Falcon Park and get a chance to support our local businesses. The picture we've got up here is just a little aerial view, kind of focused in on the Bradford Street Playground. Bradford Street Playground is the most recent of many playground renovations that have happened over the last handful of years. It was designed, as all of the playgrounds are, with community input. Whenever we do a playground project, our planning department reaches out to folks in those neighborhoods to get input on what they think should be there, what they think shouldn't be there. In this particular case, this was kind of unique. It was a little bit of a project for the students at Owasco Elementary School, took part in the planning process for this playground. And over the last few days, it's been a busy place. If you went by Bradford Street, apparently what we did was well received by that neighborhood. Saw some heavy use over the last few nice days that we've had. Another park improvement project, if we look at on the west end, what you see is the street that goes straight up and down through your screen is Garrow Street. That's Miles Lepic Park and the Auburn Permaculture Park. Last fall, there was a project there to do a living willow installation project, and that was another, you could call it community build project. There was an engagement of about 30 volunteers that went there and helped with the installation of that living willow project. And this is actually a great park on the west end that I think a lot of folks don't necessarily realize is there or how expansive it is. It's a very nice spot on the west end and offers a little bit of variety in what we have for city parks. A big project that we had, aside from capital projects this year, was in relation to New York State Executive Order 203, which referred to, from New York State, basically was what's commonly referred to as the police reform initiative. So back during the summertime, our local police department and police department leadership took it upon themselves prior to Executive Order 203 to proactively get out in the community. And they had done that for quite some time prior to a lot of the issues that came up during the summertime that prompted Executive Order 203. So we were on good ground. We had a good foundation of community relations. When the executive order came out, our police department was able to jump off from a good point. They collaborated, as they always have, with the Cayuga County Sheriff's Department and local village police departments to come up with a plan to address the requirements of Executive Order 203. That's the technical aspect of it. The more practical aspect of it was that we engaged in a number of community dialogues, some with some focus groups and some just general community discussions open to the public. We were able to, a week or two ago, kind of wrap up our necessary requirement to New York State to locally have City Council adopt a resolution that addressed the executive order, but more importantly, through the summer, the fall, and through the winter, those community discussions have really helped us to open up communications, to network amongst each other, and actually along the way we've addressed some other issues that in a way that we hadn't necessarily done before. So at least me personally, I know we've had many more discussions about a number of topics, some of them outside of community policing and along the lines of other topics that are important. So like the biggest example I could give would be vaccine distribution. I'll talk about that more in a little while here, but it really became a good process to improve communication with various community groups, and we're happy about that. The next slide we have here is the American Rescue Plan. So that is the federal government's stimulus plan for municipalities, at least the aspect that we're discussing here right at the moment. So the city of Auburn has been notified that we should expect to receive just slightly more than $22 million over the next approximately 12 months. That amount will be split in half, with 50% being allocated to us within probably the next 45 days or so, and the other half of that amount being delivered about 12 months after that. Those funds, while we're still waiting for definitive guidance on that, those funds can be used to help us respond to the public health emergency, the COVID emergency. They can be used to help us recoup lost revenue or expenses related to providing services, as well as for us to make investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And again, we don't have the details of all of the rules surrounding that funding. And when we do, our plan is to have a workshop and with City Council, which will be another public meeting. We're hoping to do a daytime workshop, possibly on a weekend, to walk through what the appropriate uses of that funding will be. And what we're looking to do is we certainly want, our goal is to have a long-term positive impact on the community. So that'll be a very measured approach. This is maybe you could call it a once in a lifetime or once in a generation opportunity to have this kind of an inflow of revenue. So we take the task seriously, and we'll certainly have a lot of discussion on the appropriate and best use of that funding. We could probably spend a whole lot of time talking about COVID and our ongoing response to COVID, not just the city, but the community as a whole. Again, as I mentioned it when we started this, when we did this last year, we were kind of just getting started in all of this stuff. We really didn't know where we'd be. There was certainly a lot of speculation as to how significant the problem would become locally, if it would become significant. And I guess that's all a matter of certain perspective. Early on, about this time last year, we started to have serious discussions and take actions related to our city operations based on the rules and regulations that were coming out of Albany related to operations in response to COVID. And early on, some of those discussions and decisions locally were tough because they were driven and influenced by what was happening downstate, which didn't necessarily seem to be impacting us here in central New York. But we took the approach that, you know, we would follow the New York State guidance as a matter of being the appropriate thing to do. But we also wanted to put ourselves in a position where we were being proactive about things enough that we could slow the spread of COVID within our own workforce so that we could continue to safely provide all of the necessary services to the community, and to do everything we could to limit the impact so that things like closures of businesses and restrictions on businesses could be lifted as soon as possible. And certainly some of those decisions were difficult for us to see happen and to roll out in the community. But a lot of interesting things happened along the way. We had several local businesses that stepped up to produce PPE. So locally we have several manufacturers that specialize in plastics, and those businesses in particular had the ability and the will to actually change up their operations and not only provide us here locally with some of the equipment or material that we needed to continue operations, but they were able to actually market some of those products in a way that helped their businesses continue to stay relevant during that time and stay open and provide service throughout the country. So that was good to see that happen. Locally, our municipal operations are, and I hate to use the term essential, because we found that in the very beginning, when we start talking about essential workers, that really certainly is defined by a period of time, and certain things are essential 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But when you go 3 or 4 days without certain services, you become aware of how essential those services are. Or maybe it's something that a service that you only receive once a month or something like that. And over this long time frame that COVID has dragged out, we certainly have seen that most of the services that the city provides are essential at one level or another. But we modified our operations to comply with state executive orders and some best practices that were out there. We had a lot of our city staff working from home, and we continued to work with Cayuga County and New York State and a variety of agencies within those organizations to try to do the best we could to provide whatever level of service and assistance we could to the community. That became really important when we finally ended up with a vaccine coming to the market, and the distribution of that vaccine became very important to not only the public health, but to start to get back to normal, or whatever normal is, so that we could see businesses reopen and we could reduce some stress on things like the hospital, right? So during all of this, the hospital in the fall and during the winter months was significantly stressed with the number of COVID patients they were trying to treat and the severity of symptoms that those local folks had. So when an opportunity came up for us to potentially partner with various organizations for the delivery of vaccines, we proactively jumped at that opportunity. And what we did early on is that, as we knew that New York State was and the federal government were prioritizing who would be eligible for these vaccines, we knew that there would be a gap, and that gap typically was with the elderly population and their access to internet or their ability to navigate the internet, as many of these vaccine clinics had sign-ups protocols that were online. So early on, the city established a call-in line that could be utilized to received phone calls from folks that didn't have access to the internet or weren't savvy enough utilizing the internet to sign up online. And we continue that service so that if folks are having an issue, they can call us. We'll let them know whether or not they're eligible. And what we would do is we would take those people and we'd get them into a clinic that was open for their particular eligible criteria. And I say that because along the way, we've had a variety of clinics. The Cayuga County Health Department has been the primary one that we've worked with, but along the way, the Auburn Community Hospital was running clinics, and East Hill Family Medical was running clinics, and there are a few others out there. Each one of those agencies, oddly enough, had different criteria at any given time for who they could accept in and who they could vaccinate. So we did our best to work with them to make sure that they had lists of people that they could vaccinate. And it's been awkward sometimes along the way, but it has worked out, continues to be in operation. We've also provided administrative staff to a variety of clinics around, most notably the Cayuga County Health Department clinics, and some assistance in the background with some of the others. Probably what's been most noticeable, and that's largely due to the uniform that they wear, is the Auburn Fire Department. Early on, saw this as an opportunity for them to take their skill set as emergency medical technicians and modify it slightly and be able to certify quite a few members of the fire department to get out in the community and provide vaccination support by actually delivering the injections. So at this point in time, we have over 35 firefighters in the fire department that are certified to provide that service, and they have provided a tremendous amount of local support to the Cayuga County Health Department and the East Hill Family Medical to get allocated vaccines into arms. And we've done that through fixed site assistance, as well as we've worked with the Cayuga County Health Department to develop some mobile clinics that have gone to senior housing complexes and things like that. That process is continuing, and we're really proud of the work that everybody on city staff has done. And this has been across all of the departments. Everybody has stepped up in one way or another. We appreciate that. And the latest number I have here at my disposal is approximately 11,000 vaccines distributed within Cayuga County. Along the way through COVID, there has been federal funding that has trickled in a variety of ways. We've seen some municipal relief in the way of FEMA funding, the same as it would in a natural disaster. We've also seen some injection of funding into our CDBG program that was to be used specifically for COVID relief. So the first round of that was designated as CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant, COVID response funding, and we received a total of approximately $623,000 there. This is all pass-through funding. We didn't take any administrative cut of this. This is all money that came into the city and then was redistributed out into the community in a variety of ways. And in that case, that first round, $50,000 to housing, $169,000 approximately to human services organizations, and then business assistance to the approximate sum of about $400,000. So that assisted 58 local businesses and 7 not-for-profits. And then a little while after that, we received another round of Community Development Block Grant funding, referred to as COVID-3, for approximately $267,000. All of that money went out the door to assist a total of 11 human service agencies. And lastly, we're in the process of working on our budget for the year 21-22. And it's going to be an interesting process. As we got into this process last year, we knew there were going to be many unknowns. We didn't know what was going to happen with sales tax revenues, other revenues. We didn't know what would happen to the local business landscape or what kind of costs we might incur. Today, a year later, we're in kind of similar situation. We do have a track record of how things impacted us last year, and that is good information to have. So we were very concerned last year about sales tax, but our sales tax revenues didn't take as much of a hit as we had anticipated. So we have a little more confidence in where sales tax may be moving forward. One of the big things that we didn't know last year would be how the New York State budget would roll out and what the local allocations would look like and the impact that would have on our budget. But with the recent federal stimulus, it looks as though this year's allocations from New York State, the ones we're typically used to receiving, will be made whole and possibly even enhanced to some extent. We won't know that typically until the end of March. The state budget typically has to be approved by March 31st. So within 2 weeks or so, or a week now, we should have a better idea where we stand with state budget allocations for our local municipality. We have to see exactly how our COVID relief is going to play a part in the local budget, but we want to do our best to minimize that, make sure that our local budget stands as well as it can on its own without assistance, so that we know that moving into the future, we have some stability there as well. And we also have, as I mentioned before, FEMA funding that should be coming to us to offset some of the costs related to providing the services that we have during the COVID response. So that's kind of where we stand, the state of things in the city of Auburn, New York. Certainly a lot going on over the last year. Again, we did not stop as other municipalities did. A lot of municipalities stopped doing capital projects and really put the brakes on things. They laid off employees, they furloughed employees. We did not take that approach. I'm proud to say that we kept our folks employed. We kept them busy doing things. We held steady, and I think that has worked well for us because those things all have a community impact. If we lay off our employees, then they can't necessarily partake in their contributions to the local economy either. So we held steady. We held steady on the budget. We held steady on our employment of our workers, and we've come through this in pretty good shape. We have an opportunity coming to us with the federal stimulus to do good things, and hopefully things that will have a positive impact for the long term. That's our goal. And I guess that's it. We'll continue to work hard to try to make appropriate decisions that have a positive community impact. I just want to wrap up and say thanks to all of our city staff who have stepped up in ways that the folks in the community probably don't even realize all the work that's going on behind the scenes. But I can tell you City Hall for the last year, but especially the last 6 months or so, has been a flurry of activity trying to keep up with vaccination process and help support our community partners to get those vaccines out. And I see that continuing, right, for several months. I'd like to thank also the Cayuga County Health Department, who has become a tremendous partner through all of this. I don't know whether they're our partner, we're their partner. I don't know. We're partners. So we've been doing a lot of work together. Auburn Community Hospital, which has certainly been under a tremendous amount of stress for the last 6 months, dealing with severe cases and number of cases, and has done a fantastic job dealing with that. All the people that contributed to our community discussions related to police reform and vaccination distribution and all that. We really in the last year have had a lot of discussions with a variety of groups that serve the public in a variety of ways. COVID has made that difficult on one hand, but it's also made it very convenient to have a quick meeting in the evening from your living room. So we've really engaged a lot of people during a difficult time. And again, to our local businesses that have stepped up and either changed the way you do business and created new product to deal with the pandemic, or our local businesses that have modified their business delivery so that they could continue to provide service to the community, whether it's a product or an actual service. But we appreciate that, and all that hard work, I think, is certainly paid off. And in a number of ways, it's reduced the impact of COVID on the community, and it's put us in a better spot to recover from the impact of it. So that's all I've got. I'm going to wrap it up with that. And thank you. Thanks, everybody. And good luck. It's going to be an interesting few more months.